Kind of silly to put it in a press road.
I know, yeah, we would.
Or even Bangor, you know, because they don't really do local.
We actually do put it in the Bangor one because it gives a higher percentage of people look at it. And Morning Sentinel still considers that we are part of their area.
Aren't they like everything north of Augusta?
Yeah, I know.
I think
Yeah.
they're kind of a dying breed, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate. Things are really changing.
Some of the laws will have to change when there are no more newspapers.
Yes, yes, or they start going to weekly. So you can't sustain it.
Well, that's what I mean.
I think isn't more already goes like no Mondays or something?
They
skip
cut out
Mondays.
Monday papers, yes, yes. That's the beginning of the end, you know.
Oh, yeah.
All right, the system is on.
Okay.
Oh, and when people had thought like, somehow it wasn't working at the last council meeting, it was on later that night.
I told
So I don't know
him that.
Yeah, we
So
didn't have to do
he
anything.
said it was cutting out.
Yeah, we didn't have to do anything to it, and it runs all the way through.
And it did.
So who
Okay.
knows if there was something to do with, you know, the system or who knows.
Who knows? Anything that's out there in the air is anybody's guess.
Yes, that's true. All right, ordinance committee.
You want me to call the where I'm gonna do
Yes.
this? Okay. So welcome to the ordinance committee meeting for the town of Pittsfield, Wednesday, March 11th at 6:30 p.m. We'll do a roll call. So we have Councilor Bolster, our audience member,
Who made it in time?
Councilor Limonite, and Councilor Billings, and Mayor Donahue, and Senator Dr. Do you want to do a pledge? It's not on here, but.
Pledge
Which
Pledge
Pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pause for a moment of silence.
So if you like, because we have an audience member who's here for a specific item, we can skip down to B.
Oh, we can do that.
Yeah. So we've got Chapter 2, Administrative Code, amend Parks and Recreation Committee and Pinnacle Park Board sections. And
So
so,
that's towards the end, right?
so that would be mid-document. So in the council packet that we have for your ordinance, the Parks and Recreation part starts on page 8. And so I've given Ben a copy of just the Parks and Recreation. And so he had some comments on different sections. I did have to make a few things, changes to fit in with the town code, the charter, administrative code, personnel policy, and then just regular administrative items, the bid policy and everything, but minor changes. And so you've got before you on page 8, the combination of the recreation department. Now the departments that have committees with them have the committees under the department with all the details. And then there's a list at the end of the committees. And all the committees that aren't with the department or work with the department are all listed separately. And then in that alphabetical listing, it refers to the committees that are in with the departments and just to see that section. And so I left that same thing merely because of the cost of making all these changes. We're not just adding an item like the social media. That's one little sentence, doesn't cost much. Or deleting something, we're making all these changes back and forth. And so that we have to list each item out. And technically we're supposed to list each item, then list the difference. So we've done this in a summary form for the ad for the paper because it's going to be very expensive. And we're thinking for the postings, what we'll do is post what it is now and then post these new versions together. So if somebody did, just wanted to see everything without the crossed out places and the underlined, they'll have a copy of the code right behind there that says, current code, and then proposed code is what we have before us. to try to make it look as good as possible. So almost all the language that Ben had put in here, had proposed is in here. There's just a few items that are not. So number 1, 801 establishment stays the same. 802 Parks and Recreation Committee, there's a whole paragraph that comes out, and then the new paragraph that was proposed is before there. And then, as these are subcategories, like sub-areas that the committee will work on and have oversight of, I've set those up as subsections, like 802.1 is the park, so that talks about the parks function. 802.3 talks about the Paul E. Buckring Pool. Part 802.3 talks about all the recreational activities and programming, because it may be more than recreational type things. And so Ben had pointed out correctly, so at the top of page 9, which on his paper originally was page 2, because he had just the recreation part. Second line down, we have to change that Manson Park Trust Committee to Manson Park Trustees, so that's fine. So I fixed that one. And then he had a question on 802.3, first line. It talked a lot about being on the interviewing committee, helping with the personnel, working on the performance review and all of that. And so some of that is not in compliance with our ordinances, so the best way to deal with this, and I have been told that I'm being too specific here, but I think this is fine. To assist the town manager with oversight, which means everything, of the recreation director position, including but not limited to reviewing, maintaining, and liaison, working together on day-to-day recreational issues, which is everything. So I think that general statement, even though I've been told that that's too specific, I think that's fine.
It's pretty broad.
And that should
It's
be-
not
It should cover
specific, it
everything.
covers,
It
I
should
think
be
that
everything.
covers A to Z.
I'm sorry, can I
So read it,
the intent was just if there are certain responsibilities that we would like the rec director to perform because of programming, and I say we, right, the committee, because of programming or different types of things we're putting together, we want to be able to work with Catherine to
Yes,
see if we can work those into the
yes.
job description, things
Yeah,
like that.
that sounds fine.
And if we're getting a lot of feedback that things aren't happening or there's some conflicts, that obviously be able to provide that feedback as well is important.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep, that all would happen, and can happen, and actually would be helpful, because right now we have a part-time rec director handling basically a full-time job and doing the very best that they can. So she needs help and would welcome help.
Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah.
All right, so that was the second item Ben had mentioned. And then he mentioned in 8.05 funds, and I do agree, the funds should be moved around to a different place here. But I was trying, it had an empty spot, so I slid it in there because I didn't want to make any more changes. And so he noted that, says the committee, I should say who the committee is, and that would be true. So we will put the Parks and Recreation Committee. And then I changed the language from the committee will make expenditures or spend money to the committee shall make recommendations on expenditures of funds budgeted, raised, or donated. And that's because committees don't go out and spend money of the town. They have to work with the staff member, and then they can set up a system, and this has worked for some committees, that they can just call in and do things. But there are some that, and it won't be your group, but the next group, after you retire, they could just start spending money left and right. We have a committee that did that now, and, it's hard to rein in. So we just have that they make recommendations, and then we'll set up a system that works. Some committees, as well as the departments, will email in what they want, we write out the POs. Some come in directly, some send notes, some leave notes, they do it all different ways, some telephone. They use a system that works, and with the exception, minor exceptions here and there, a couple of exceptions, everything works really well.
The only reason we wrote it, and I'm fine with it like this, obviously it should be like this, right? The only reason we wrote it a little bit different to begin with was, should there come a time, which I don't foresee, where we go out, we raise a bunch of money for a certain expenditure, and the money comes in, and then we say, we'd like to spend the money on this expenditure, and we're told no, obviously the fundraising, the people that donated and stuff would be very unhappy. Not that I ever foresee that, but.
So what we've done with the funds, and this has made it complicated, but I had alluded to this previously. Before most of you were involved, the recreation department was run by the pharmacist at the hospital, and he did a wonderful job. I don't know how he managed all this. He had 9 little groups. They all had their own money and checking accounts under the town's name, which is not a legal item, so we had to fix that. But when we got their monies taken in and agreed it would be run by the rec director, and we have a rec director all year rather than summer, to show that we would honor their sports area, and for them to turn the money over, we set up a second account. So we have enterprise funds on the town budget, which are listed every year in the audit, which says spring sports, football, cheerleading. It has what every sport is. We added on cheerleading, so that's in there too. So every single sport has their monies listed in the audit and is kept separate.
Is this committee gonna be able to kind of see real-time balances for those to know, well, we don't have the money for this, or we're probably gonna have to raise some funds if we wanna try and do
Yeah,
that?
monthly there's a report that's issued.
Okay.
There's 24 reconciliations that are done. So I'm in the midst of that now. So yes, there's a chart that's kept upstairs that has what football has in it, what all of them have in it, in their accounts. So we normally will try to keep the area that we're in, like we'll be going into spring sports, we try to keep that one up to date. We won't get into the football one probably for a while. So yes, you can find out what's in there.
Yeah,
And so
great.
now we've got the skating rink is a new one for enterprise fund. So there'll be something else.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it works out really good. So with the exception of the fact this is a bit out of order, it does seem really good. And if you did want me to, I could change this around. It's just gonna mean more ads, but,
That's totally up to you guys. The changing around she's talking about is, we talk about the Parks and Rec Committee, and then you move on to the Rec Director, and then the
Skip it.
Lansing Manson Park, and you go back to talk about funds and the Rec Committee, overseeing funds. So flow-wise, if you were starting from scratch, it's not a deal, but it's not worth spending money on, I don't think. It's my gosh, yeah.
so if I did change it around, it would be more expensive. But what I would do is have 801 establishment, then 802 rec director, 803 would be the committee with all their items, 804 would be funds, 805 would be then the parks.
How much money are we talking?
A lot.
We're getting a quote for the ad now because there's so much, and that's why I didn't go on one of those categories, and there's all the other ordinances there with the terminology. The ad now is like from here to list everything, so we think it's gonna be, I got an idea, but we'll see what it comes in. We're getting a soft quote from the paper.
You
And
have
that's-
to, in today's day and age, you still have to post this in the newspaper?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
With social, with,
The
Every-
law
Internet
has,
and all that stuff.
the law has not changed. Yeah, in our charter and our
Where's our
administrative.
representative?
Yeah, the Maine Municipal Association, on behalf of the towns, 3 times that I remember, and then they finally gave up. They would go to the legislature and try to have this fixed and come in with a bill. It could go into the Daily, so it could go into the Rolling Thunder, and then there was a Piscataquis County paper, and there were some other ones. And the media lobby would come, and they would win. They always won. And then MMA just dropped it.
So are we talking hundreds of dollars?
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's gonna be expensive.
I'm talking like, what's the difference between, because it seems like if we're gonna do this, we may as well just do it right and have everything flow properly, even if it's gonna be like a couple $100 or $100.
No, I think we're over 1,000.
For a paper ad?
Yep.
Yeah.
We got a lot of changes. Oh,
Is this
yeah.
3 consecutive days it has to run or something?
No, it'll run once.
Just one?
Yeah, that's why I didn't go in and change all of those other ordinances, chapter 5, set up everything else there on the terms of the job description. This one, I could, I do like it if it flowed better. I didn't like the way I was doing it here, but let's see what the cost of the ad is, and We'll find out tomorrow if it'll only cost, I don't know, $50 more to fix that, we can do it. But yeah, it's gonna be expensive anyway for what we got.
Yeah, cause I mean, theoretically, this is gonna be it, I mean, for hopefully 20, 30 years anyway. Who knows where the town's gonna go from here, but, you know, for a while, so we may as well do it right the first time and have it make sense.
So the only change you're talking about is taking that section 805 and putting it after the description of all the parks?
Well, I would, if we're gonna actually put this in the order it should be in, it's a department. So 801 would stay the same as it is. 803 Rec Director would become 802. Parks and Recreation Committee would become 803 with its little sections. And then 804 would be the funds. And then 805 would be Hawthorne Park and Lakes Diamond. 806 would be Remembrance Park. 807 would be Fenway Park.
So it's just those two paragraphs would switch, and be able to change.
Well,
Well,
we have
and
to
renumbering of all the
renumber
other ones.
it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you have to print all that in the ad anyway, don't you?
We've summarized this, we've been creative here, because otherwise this is why we haven't changed the chart. You have to post for that you have to post every single word. So we've summarized this. You're supposed to post every word or do a summary. So we've attempted a good summary. Let me check and see. I'll change it if it's not gonna cost too much more than what we're already dealing with.
Yeah, cause I think it'd be worthwhile to do this and make it flow as well as possible, cause it's gonna be new for a while anyways.
Do you have to post the parts that you're striking, or can you just say remove section 1100, remove?
Well, for the posting, we'll post this whole document, and we'll post the sections as they are now, because people have trouble reading this. You know, it's got its little chart. Like I'm doing this for other council committees, and as Deborah saw this afternoon, it can be quite something else there with the charts and everything.
Okay. Anybody have any other changes to that?
Catherine, you mentioned under 805, under the funds,
Yes.
something about the committee.
Yeah, I changed that. Originally, it said the committee was going to be doing expenditures, so we're gonna say the Parks and Recreation Committee shall make recommendations on expenditures,
Okay.
which is then they submit either through the rec director, or if they set up their own little system where they go directly to the town office on their expenses if they agree on what they're doing, you know. They
Okay.
might have one committee member in charge of all kinds of different things. You know, each committee member might be in charge of a different area or something. And then I did figure out, just in case this question is asked, the second sentence under section, it says the committee shall make recommendations to the town council for decisions on any expenditures required outside of those budgeted for the given year, raised or donated. So I figured, would that could include capital expenditures, as well as special projects that maybe you were looking at for the future.
Where is that?
Yeah, in 805 funds, second paragraph, second sentence.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we got the regular funds in the budget, and then the monies they raise or the donations they get. And then you got make recommendations to the town councils for decisions for any expenditures required outside of the budgeted areas for the given year, raised or donated. So I thought that could be like a capital expenditures for multiple years or something.
Yeah, and I probably don't see that one happening if it's not budgeted, we're really doing it.
Yeah.
So, but the last piece being recommendations to the council for future budget
Yes.
items.
Yeah, that'd
But
be
obviously
future
we have to
budget,
run
yeah.
one.
Yeah, this will be really good if we can set up a little capital budget for recreation, because there are specific funds through businesses and banks that you can get funds donated for the town. And the one item we've never been able to take care of properly is the football equipment. You know, the helmets, they replace a few each year, but they should be replaced on a quicker status because they're older.
Yeah.
There's no specific requirement. They run out after a certain period of time, but they're not always in the best of shape, and it
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah, they have printed expirations inside.
Yeah.
So we need a motion and then to vote to accept to
Yes.
to the full council, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody like to make a motion?
Who loves recreation the most? So make a
I
motion.
move we accept the changes to chapter 2 administrative code and amend parks. We talking about that?
Yep.
Amend parks and recreation committee and Pinnacle Park board sections as written.
We need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, and then if it's not gonna be too much more expensive, I will just straighten out the sections.
Okay.
For
So
a better
basically, it's
flow.
as discussed,
Yes.
so. Any other questions, councilors?
I think it's a great idea, I just want to stick my 2 cents in.
This
But I
is
think
good.
it's a long time coming, I think this is a great
Yep.
idea.
It is, because the Pinnacle Park group never met until there was a problem at the Pinnacle, and then all of a sudden, we had to go into action, and it worked out okay, but then, after everything was fixed, it didn't meet again.
Well, hopefully this will bring some cohesion to the management of the parks and the budget system and the operation of the rec department as well. Give a little more support to the rec department as well.
Yeah, recreation department really does need support. They have all the volunteers, which is wonderful, but you just have one person trying to plan, manage, and organize this stuff, which is hard.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any nays? All right, so that'll pass with a recommendation to go to the full council when the language is ready. And we don't have to put a date on that, right? Because we're gonna wait and hold these until we have a bunch of stuff.
Well, you had wanted, well, let's say if we get through the rest of this tonight, then you had wanted this to go to the meeting on 3/17, which I haven't changed, but it may need some changes.
Okay.
If we can, if not, then I'll get it.
Okay.
All right.
So this one, you think it'll be brought to 317?
I'm hoping if we can, we wanted to do these together because it's costly and timely, and it just seems better. It brings more people of interest and they learn more. I think that we should be able to get through at least one of these other sections. I'm not sure if we'll be finished on one of the, there's 3 items on here.
Well, let me do my part and get rid of your way then.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much. I
Have
appreciate your
anything,
support.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do you want to skip back up to chapter 2,
Yeah,
admin
let's go up to chapter 2.
departments, public works, transfer station, recycling section.
Yeah.
And all those assorted chapters.
Yes,
5,
yeah.
7, 10, 13, 13B, 15, and 19.
Yes,
A
there's
lot of it
some
was-
excitement in the office here once we get into it. I was like, well, we can be calm, it'll be fine.
Most of this was just changing of titles and,
It's because it's everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah, so I went through and gave us the maximum flexibility that we could have. Right now, we have what's called a public works foreman, who does foreman work, who does director work, and also does regular line person work. So he doesn't care what his title is. I don't think anyone in any of the departments does, including myself. So there is different terminology in different places because things have been voted in at different times prior to when I arrived, and I don't know all the history. So in the other ordinances, we've got things that will say Public Works Director, Highway Director, Highway Foreman, Public Works Foreman. We've got Superintendent, we've got all kinds of stuff. So in this section, to separate this out as to the way it really is and has been for decades, I separated Public Works, Recycling, and Transfer Station into their own departments, which they have been for many decades. And then, to give us maximum flexibility, every place that said Public Works Director, I said and/or Foreman, which would mean that you can have someday a Public Works Director, you could have just a Public Works Foreman, you could have both. It'll be your choice based upon the budget. And so I took out anything to do with highway, because Public Works is more than just highway. It's buildings and grounds and other activities coming to the municipal building, going to the library and all of that. So I got rid of all the highway stuff. So to do the minimum number of changes for the maximum effect, I separated those out. And then we call our coordinator for recycling and transfer station, many names. So rather than in one place have transfer station coordinator, in another place have recycling coordinator, which is what it is now, I said just coordinator. So that that way we can have one position. But if someday you wanted two, you could do that, but right now you have one and only need one. So I just called it coordinator, and then took out all the transfer station employees from the highway or public works area and made their own section, which is the way they've been set up now, and tried to say as least as much as possible. I fixed where, for some reason, I saw this when I came, but you don't involve yourself in minor changes. It had all the recycling center attendants and transfer station attendants reporting to the town manager. I have no idea why, but that's been decades. So I just ignored that. Of course, Donnie was in charge of them, and so I fixed that in this document because we were moving things around. So then, when we went and looked at the other ordinances, it was definitely out of control because all this terminology has like 27 different places that we found. There's no way we're going to fix all those. So by saying public works director or foreman, we're sort of covering almost all of those. So it will be whatever the budget is. I mean, someday you may have a public works director, you may have a public works foreman, both. You could change in the next budget period, change the foreman to a director and give them a raise. You could leave him as the highway foreman, but you have maximum flexibility with the way it's set up now.
And what you're talking about having the recycling center coordinator and the transfer station coordinator is 604.1 and
Yes.
605.1. And right now that's just Donnie. But
That's
it
Donnie.
could be 2 people.
It could be someday.
Okay,
yeah.
I got it.
But right now there's
So
one
I thought
coordinator.
that, it was my understanding it was, David Whitman was now the head of the recycling part.
No, he's
They gave him some kind of like a,
yes, he got a promotion so that Donnie could leave the facility, he would be in charge. So he's just in charge. He's like, they call him second in command. They've always called it my second. It's just
okay.
the terminology. So we actually gave him a raise because he does a wonderful job, and we gave him all the responsibility. So every time Donnie would leave, something would happen, he'd have to come back, straighten it out. So now he does it all, once in a while he does, but not always. If it's a big thing, he comes back. Otherwise, he directs David to take care of it, or David takes care of it without anything needing to be done, which is good.
I didn't know if that was what
That's
this
good.
coordinator was, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Oh, for the recycling?
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
No, we're very fortunate to have David. That's really been a big help. He stepped right up and took over a bunch of things, just like Chris did in water sewer.
Excellent. All right, any other questions about the Chester 2 transfer station, recycling center, and for foreman changes?
Will this limit, I'm guessing it's a no, but say the I'm gonna call them highway department, needs like a helping hand from like the transfer station, or the transfer station uses the highway department, like if they need to, sometimes they have projects going on where they need each other's help, is this gonna
They all,
change that
no, they
relationship?
all have to work together, and frankly, neither of them care that anything has changed in
Okay.
there.
As
Yeah.
long as they can
They just
continue
keep
to do what
doing
they're
what they
doing.
do.
Yeah. They just go and they do what they have to do. Everybody does what they have to do. It doesn't matter what your title is. Like I do, just like everybody else, you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah, I didn't know, but for like budget reasons or who knows what.
No.
Well, like when Mike Havey is on vacation, Dean
Right.
might be
Yeah.
driving the
Right, yeah,
transfer.
that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
they do that all the time.
And we try to address that by we're paying for the licenses for several of the employees to go and get a higher level license so they can drive the bigger trucks. We'll see how well this goes, but we got multiple people that are gonna try.
Mhm.
And then they'll do the practicing during the summer with the bigger vehicles and then go in for their test.
And then they could probably be used in the winter
Yes, definitely.
for plowing.
Yes, yes. Mhm.
Any other questions about this topic? Pete, are there any questions? Pretty good?
Yep.
Okay, let's vote on this. We need a motion.
Who loves public works,
Go for it.
transfer station and recycling the most here?
You can just call it 2A on the agenda if you want, I think.
Feel free
It's
to.
To
pretty
a chapter
long.
2.
You want me to say it?
Yeah.
I'll say it.
I'll say it, but I'm not on committee.
I move we accept the changes to Chapter 2 Administrative Code, amend Department's Public Works, Transfer Station, and Recycling sections.
Second.
Did you hear that?
I did. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nay? Alright, so that will pass.
All right, so I tried to adjust that as best as I could, so we would not have to at this point change all these other little chapters here, because their names are throughout here, with other names too. So that would get us down to number C, or alphabet C, Chapter 2 Administrative Code, as social media used by town councilors. And so that is the first section under 109. So we looked over the Chapter 2 and figured, let's put everything in Chapter 2, it does fit, and it's town council, so we put it under the town council section at the end. And we noticed in the code, at different times, people, and this was before me, have put in items as sections and subsections. So we figured to change as least numbers as possible, and it seemed sensible that all these sections of this would be subsections. So we wouldn't go section 109, 110, 111 like is in some parts of the code. It seemed more sensible. This is your section on social media, it should be all together in one section.
Makes sense.
And we did that. It did make it a little bit longer because you're indenting more. But I cut out as much words as I could, put sentences together that seem to go together. So it's a little bit different than the sample that you had that I put together from all the different policies and procedures that are found in codes, and tried to combine like things together. And most of this is just common sense. But as we found out from not having a lot of rules or doing interviews, one of the committees got an individual that got appointed, and then they created havoc on social media. And so, we put some rules together from looking at all the other policies.
So this is only covering town councilors.
Correct.
Is this also applied to committee members?
This is for town councilors.
But would something like this also be applied to committee members?
You
Because
have
the council's never had the issue with Facebook.
Oh,
or
yeah, the town council is not the issue.
Right, so we're
Should
making
we
a
amend
policy
it, though?
here for that, but I'm wondering if we have do we have any policies in place for when new committee members come on and start serving? Do they get a,
They don't get the employees get the letter that they signed that should make it clear, it makes it extremely clear as to what you can and can't do. I don't think we can regulate the committee members as much, but we could try to make up a letter. We could try to make up a letter that they would sign when they came on, but I don't think I can restrict it as much as we do.
I'm thinking more of like an orientation type thing. Like as a council, we went through our 10-minute training or whatever it was about the Freedom of Information Act.
Oh,
Like,
I've heard that was more than 10 minutes.
Well, I'm being generous there. But like something like that's like committee-wide training, that when we have new committees seated every year, that maybe there's a session that either yourself or one of the other clerks goes and like does a little training for them about how, like they have to learn how to operate the camera, they have to learn how to like what is expected of them as serving on the committees, how to conduct themselves, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that would be educating them about, what the town would expect of people representing and being, representatives of the town, both being in a public meeting as well as being online.
I'm not on the committee, but I definitely agree with what you're saying, and I would like to see if there's a legal opinion on that.
As to
Because-
whether we can
Right,
have
because
recommendations.
to me, it seems like common sense. If you're going to be on any of the town committees or boards, that you should have to follow the same rules as the counselors do.
Right, a
They are
code of conduct
representing,
type thing.
right, they're representing the town,
The
so.
letter that the employees sign, is it more like a code of conduct type thing?
Yes, yes, on what they're gonna do and not do, and certain things aren't done on town time, it goes into social media, you know, and
Okay,
just-
so it might not have to be quite as specific, but pieces and parts of that could be modified maybe. If we have something to go by already, it could be modified
To
to
have
more
that
apply
sign.
towards a committee type, service type thing.
So the item we're gonna run into is the freedom of expression, on which there's been court cases in which towns have tried to, you can regulate the employees much more than you can regulate your volunteers.
Well, it's more of making them aware, I don't know if we would be actually regulating them, and we don't really have any teeth behind it.
You're
But it would
right.
be making them aware of what our expectations would be as far as this is the expectation of how the employees act and conduct themselves, and this is what we expect of you to conduct yourself in a public forum. You know, whatever you do on your personal is your personal, but if you're representing the group and you're in a public setting or you're in a public function, this is the conduct that we would expect.
All right, so I'm wondering if there's something we can put in the committee section.
And that might be another discussion to have separate from this.
I'm just gonna look quickly here.
It could just be a letter, not necessarily changing anything in the
Right.
code. Just make it a letter that goes with a
An
training
awareness.
packet.
Let's try it as an informal item first, that goes along when they get appointed. And then if that does not work as well as we would like, we should be able to put a sentence in under the alphabetical description of boards and committees under Article 2 in Chapter 2, Admin Code, that says that the expectation of the town council is that those individuals serving on committees will follow procedures that are listed under your town council social media one. You know, expectations that if you set up a site and do this, we would expect this. Might be able to do something like that.
Okay.
Let's do it as informal first.
Yeah, and I'm not thinking of like them setting up a site or anything for their committee per se. I'm just thinking of general conduct during the meetings and as representatives during.
Like not discussing confidential information
Right,
or starting rumors.
well, I don't know about that. I don't know how far that will go, but, you know, just to make them aware of the expectation. And I would expect that, you know, when we're seating new committees, that we would give them kind of an orientation about the responsibilities and the area that they're covering for their committee as well.
When I used to go to all the committee meetings, that would happen when the new people came in. We would sit down and talk informally about, and the committee members would help, and we'd all just talk about things and help
Yeah.
them. And then after the committees didn't meet as much, we probably didn't do that as much. The committee actually took that over.
Took that over,
Yeah.
so maybe just to have some continuity from one committee to the next, to have like a little information sheet for them to have at their first meeting, you know, and that the chairperson can go through that with the new members. Kind of like we did, like we had a review of what had been going on in the ordinance committee for new members. Same thing in the finance committee, so that they were kind of like brought up to speed on what was going on and what was kind of in line coming up. It would be the same idea for like the pool committee or the now recreation committee. They could kind of like inform all the new committee members coming in about where the projects are and what's coming up.
Yeah, they do that, and
And how it's
as in terms of what the projects are that the committees are working on, they all do that, and that has been fine, with the exception of one committee. So I'm thinking one sheet that just lays out some items for them to look at, along with the regular paperwork that they would get from the code on their committee, and then like the theater committee, I made packets for them, which now we have upstairs and the staff makes them. So they would get their independent or individual committee information, but they could be no more than one sheet that is just town procedures or something, to make it sound, yeah, which all committees would get.
Okay. Alright, so back to this part, does anybody have any other questions or concerns about the new policy here?
And basically, this is almost all common sense. But this will be helpful, like right now, there's no issue, but let's say in 4 years, we get a rambunctious counselor. This would help the town protect itself legally. The insurance company would be happier that we had something.
And it's unfortunate that you have to actually
I
put this
know.
stuff in writing.
Oh, I know. It is common sense, but sometimes people don't understand they shouldn't put certain, they just don't know some things. And some things are common sense.
I think it's good to have a little bit of a cover in our butt, so to speak.
Yeah.
Be proactive than reactive, you know, on this.
Yeah, I tried to, you could put a lot more in, I combined as much as I could and then condensed it as much as I could.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, we'll need a motion.
Make a motion that we accept Chapter 2 Administrative Code, add social media use by town councilors.
Yes. Second.
The short one.
It's all down.
Alrighty, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Alright, so that will pass on with a recommendation to go to the council.
So now we've got, under old business, ordinances requiring a plan of action due to complexity. So I would agree, I think you all would, that the municipal ban or discussion of pesticide application on municipal properties or beyond is something that's complex. And the sewer use ordinance is complex.
The municipal ban one, I'd like to hold off on that one anyway, until we get our new Parks and Rec in place. And they have a little bit of time to kind of get the lay of the land about what's going on with the parks. And then hopefully they would be giving us a report on the status of the parks. And then we can see, you know, what they're actually doing for management and then kind of go from there. Does that
Yes,
sound-
and I understand there probably will be some changes at Manson Park anyway,
Right.
in terms of what they're doing.
Mhm. Does that sound good to everybody? Wait and see
Yeah.
what the Parks and Rec. I don't know if that's considered tabling it or just.
I think
Putting
it's
it on
just,
hold.
it's just, that's our plan of action.
Okay.
I thought it'd be kinda nice to have it in place before this spring, summer season, but it's just, it's a
Yeah.
little more than we kind of imagined that it was gonna be, so.
Yeah, and it's gonna, I think we have, I think these other items are more of a priority too, as far as the expense of having all the changes.
Together.
And to get the information, to know what we're doing, we should know what we're doing now before we look at making changes to whatever that is.
Yes.
And that hasn't really been forthcoming too much. So hopefully that will change with the realignment of the committees.
What were you referring to?
The municipal ban on pesticide.
Right?
We're gonna wait and hear from the committee when the new Parks and Rec
Okay.
committee gets settled and assigned and can kind of give us a report on the parks.
Yep.
That can be one of the things that we can ask them for input on and find out kind of what's the status now of what's being done and how often and how frequently. And then, kind of use that as information to decide what we should be looking at for that.
For Manson Park, just as an aside, only one person has been doing that park for
Yeah.
25 years, so. And it's probably all in his head, nothing on paper.
No, it has to be on paper if it's applications, but the staff does not do the applications, they have a private contractor come in and do it.
Right.
But it is, it's all on paper and the state has, records for it and everything. And then Catherine, you said that the chapter 9 is pretty extensive.
That is pretty
And
extensive.
we're waiting, we had a report done from,
I talked with all of our associates, and this was the item in which, because of the complexity of the sewer use ordinance and all of the items that could be involved with it, we were told from the beginning to the end, the cost for all of associates to do this beyond our water contract. Now, I'll tell you some things we fit into that, which was good, that came out of the whole discussion. They said it would cost $3,900, so that's like no. And it's not an ordinance that would have the attorney do, it would be an ordinance we would do. So Chris and I talked about this. We looked through the examples. We like a couple of the ordinances. We're going to get it typed into the computer and then start making changes. We will need help from all of our associates, pretty much only on the part of pre-treatment and maybe some help from DEP. We've been able to, because of the type of system that we have and the agreement, verbal agreements and written letters that we have with some companies that they will not discharge until they have their testing done. And they've always brought their testing in. We've been very fortunate. That's worked well. And because we have the lagoon system and we don't have a real treatment facility, which can be an expensive nightmare, because I have had that before, very expensive. We're going to have to be careful how we do the pre-treatment part. So that we will need help from all of our associates on. Now, out of this whole discussion, because I explained, well, we don't have $3,900, we really need help. We talked about the contract that they have now with us, which has been working out good. We've still got some kinks going and everything, but overall, this has been very, very helpful. And we've been able to fix a lot of things. They have agreed to fit the water rate increase or the water rate study to see if there needs to be an increase, which there does, of some nature. They've agreed to fit that into the regular contract, and we're not going to have to pay. They usually charge like $4,000 to $5,000, so there's no charge for that. It'll fit to our regular hours. They also took our terms and conditions, because I was talking about, we don't have the money to do all these things. They took the terms and conditions and they're rewriting those to update them and everything. So no cost to that. That's usually a $2,500 charge. And I am familiar with those charges from other places. And so that's all going to fit into our regular contract. So out of the discussion on the sewer ordinance, we were able to get some more work done in the water contract. So that worked out good. So the terms and conditions for water should be coming, they were going to have a meeting last week that got canceled. So that should be coming up for a meeting. Then we're going to start in, because we've gone through the water accounts one by one and corrected what went on last year. And so now that is looking really good. And we're looking at whether we could bill quarterly and do everybody at the same time rather than every month do the same thing over and over again, doing a couple of books in the water. And so good things have come out of all of this. And so now that we got the water working good, we'll go and work on the sewer use ordinance. So I would think in 2 months at the most, we'll have an ordinance together that has pre-treatment. Could be sooner. But we want something that's sensible that people can read. What we have now is a 1976 ordinance, and you can read it, but there was a couple of conflicts in there that we've had to read together. And when people read things, they'll focus on one section, not the whole thing. And then, we got to explain it out. So that has come to light on the extensions and how they're done. So we need to get that straightened away.
okay.
Yeah. So you'll get a whole complete ordinance within 2 months, if not sooner.
So sometime late spring then, June.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, other items on hold. These are all planning board items that they're looking at. And I do not know the status. They just had a meeting Monday night, and I have not had a chance to watch it yet.
They talked, that was interesting, yeah,
They
I've
didn't-
heard all about it.
I'm gonna go and watch it later tonight, but so we'll just keep those on hold until something comes back to us from them.
On the sludge, they're working on that, and they're working on not the temporary signs, but the other signs. So this started out to deal with all the temporary feather signs and other signs, and then developed into a discussion on a request from Chimbrook for directional signs, which would be very helpful. They were really, really large, so they had to talk about it a bit.
And they did approve that, they came to a decision on that.
Yeah, they came to an agreement. And then the other items, tiny houses, has been
They
discussed
own-
off and on for a while.
A year.
Yeah, but there really wasn't much.
Yeah, that's
Was
where,
mentioned, but nothing, no action of any kind was
I
taken.
think that's where the discussion of the planning board and town council will be good, because tiny houses could be done like in a cluster type setup.
Absolutely.
So that would be houses that people could just move
be
into.
like a mini
A developer,
community.
yes, a developer could come and do that at a reasonable cost, if we can figure out how. They could cluster it, and then we could start bringing new families in that don't have to fix up old houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, the original request of that was just to remove the minimum footage
Yeah.
requirement, that's all it was.
Yeah, but-
It just turned into this big
These
thing.
things get
but-
ahead of
Yeah, but I think it's a great idea. I mean, I've
Yeah.
read some articles about it,
Yeah.
and the ones that I have seen are like communities, that it's like your neighborhood.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and
yes.
And there's
sometimes-
walking paths and lights
Yeah.
and
Sometimes
parking
in
is
some of the
away from.
developments, there's like a community hall, you know,
Yep.
because that way you don't need like all this recreation space in your home per se, and that gets people, maybe nowadays it's not a good thing, but it gets people out and about and communicating with each other,
Yeah.
especially with that. So,
Yeah, I think
okay.
that's a great idea. And
And I know Jan had said that they were waiting, that the state is looking at making some regulation changes, so they were waiting for some of those to come too, so, we'll just hear about that when they're ready with it, I guess. And then, does that bring us down to the library, new business?
Yes, and I did put
Library
a copy,
policies?
yeah, I put a copy of the sheet that Holly, our librarian, had put together for amending chapter 11. It's the last page of your pamphlet. And so she and the trustees had gotten really excited about things that she had learned about from other libraries, and being a proactive person and positive, she didn't like the fine setup, and was very apologetic when she went ahead and did it without getting the ordinance changed. So she's made some proposed revisions here, and then if you are in agreement with this and like this, then that's fine. If you had changes that you wanted or wanted to discuss how the library was set up and how how this works or doesn't work, and how the new system would work. Holly is ill right now, but would be able to come to the next meeting. She's not feeling well today, so I didn't want her to set through the whole thing.
I'm wondering why this kind of thing isn't covered by like an order by the council for setting charges and fees like we do for the theater and for the transfer station, and you know, why it would be written into here instead, or just traditionally that's the way it has always
Yes,
been, to have
yes.
fines for,
Yeah,
that it wouldn't be separate.
Yeah, this started out, the library had all their little policies, and they were challenged by somebody and realized that they really didn't have any backing because they never had them approved by the town council or by anybody. They just put them in place when the library, although a department of the town, had been operating for years like it was separate from the town. And so they got challenged on a few things and thought, you know, this should be in the regulations, and I agree, like everything else. When they brought this in, they had taken all their policies and just kept them as a book of policies and wanted a chapter for them. So we did that, but it's set up differently than the rest of the departments are. So yes, that is a point. And that's the history of how it got in there.
Okay. So basically, if somebody has an overdue book, they're notified of that, they're not charged a fine anymore, but if they lose a book, they still are responsible for replacing those books and the charges associated with that, if they lose materials.
Yeah, they
Or
are,
return them.
however, so far we haven't seen much money from that. But they have a process that's set up, and if it doesn't work through letters, they then give it to the police department, and the police goes out and delivers the notice. But yes, we've been charged through the interlibrary system. We've been charged for all the books that have been lost from other libraries by our residents who ordered them. And so we're working on this part. This used to be set up as a separate account, called overdue books or lost books. And so that account never has worked well because there's usually more lost books than revenue we're getting in. So Holly and I have decided to discontinue it because it's just a separate account, like a special revenue account that gets set up in the audit, and I have trouble balancing that at the end of the year. So it's going to be much easier that all of this will go through their regular revenue and expense budgets.
So it would just be like purchase of new materials
Yes,
then, instead of
exactly.
not pulling it out separately. And I'm sure she can have a way to track that
Yes.
within the library system to do that. Any
So,
other questions?
yeah, so this is looking to do away with fines for late fees,
Mm-hmm. No more 10 cents a
but
day.
they're still charging for damaged or lost books.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any kind of, like a consequence for a repeat offender? Like, say somebody just makes a habit out of just taking books and never paying the charges, like, is there a way we, like,
Well, they get taken to court.
you know, like ban that, you'll be banned, like repeat offenders will be banned for life from the privilege. I look as a library as a privilege and not a right, I guess, in the town.
Well, they do get taken to court, and I would imagine that, until a charge for, a missing material is settled, that they wouldn't be allowed. I mean, I would think they wouldn't be allowed to take out more books until you settle the charges on a lost material would be a
Yeah.
common sense way to think about it.
I just didn't know if we needed to write that in there while we're changing things anyway. Or maybe the, I mean, the
That's
library is
something.
not my,
That's something they have in their policies, do you know?
I think that informally they've taken care of this. I'm not sure I've seen it in their policy.
So that would be a question for Holly.
Yes, that's a question for Holly.
Yeah.
So
If we don't have to add it to the code book, if she has a policy already in place,
We could always vote on this, approve it, and then request that the library update the policy to reflect that concern.
Yeah, I think that what we would do is we need to check on that to make sure that that all works out well. Because let's say I was a citizen and I was a bit rambunctious, I would go to the library and say, I have the right to take out books here, and then challenge, you know, this, because once in a while this library gets challenged now on things, like First Amendment stuff, and, you know, things that never used to happen before. So they might get challenged, and then they'll have to produce things, and the people call the town office, and we have to try to work it out. So this might be something, if we're going to deal with one item, we should do with another item, like you brought up. So we don't have to vote on this tonight. Are we in agreement that we will take out the fines?
yes.
Okay, yeah. Pete, are you okay with that?
Yeah, for the overdue, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we'll check on that. This one's in a different section anyway, so we don't have to do this one particularly tonight. We could stick this, unless we find out that they're all already covered. It seems to me we would want something in the code book that would protect them.
Can we do an order from the council to remove fines or suspend fines pending, rewriting of this chapter 11 part? That way, I mean, she kind of already announced it and everything, so that way we can officially suspend the fines while this is being sorted out, and then the actual changes would come after we get clarification of what their policy is on Matt's question. Does that work, or is that not really?
I think that might be difficult because the order is actually for the setting of fees, so we would be revoking all fees.
If we
Would that
set
be a
the fees at
resolution then?
Which are
zero?
already here in this ordinance. If you like this, let's pass this, and then we'll work out the details on the other part.
So how are the actual fees set now? Are they set by an order of the council?
No,
They're just the
they-
library decides what it is?
Yes, the library
Okay.
used to work as a separate entity, and then I arrived and we became a department.
So can they just set their fee at zero? Even if we didn't change all this, if they just set their fee at zero? For the overdue materials, not for the replacement charges?
I think if you don't want fines, we should just take it out.
Well, I agree with that too. I'm just thinking of until this actually kind of goes through everything. In the meantime, the gap time between now and then, if we're not, are we you think we can pass this tonight and then look out the rest?
Yeah, I think, let's stick it
I'm good with
together
that.
and
That's
just
fine.
do it all at once. Yeah.
Matt, did you want to make a motion about that? Are we done talking about it? Did you have any more questions, Pete? Or Deborah?
No, I don't.
I move we accept the changes to chapter 11, public library policies, fines on overdue materials. As
Second?
updated, written.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Nope. So that will pass.
So if necessary, and the library was agreeable, would you want to put a sentence in here that, for repeat offenders, in a positive way here, but repeat offenders with multiple lost, damaged or lost books, will not be allowed to take out library books until resolved.
I'd like to see some just offenders are suspended until fines are reconciled.
Okay,
Or you could put maybe,
maybe.
like, to leave it to the discretion of the
Or
library.
maybe subject to suspension.
It might be just like one person, say, falls ill or something,
Yeah.
and like an older person or something, and it takes a while, like, that's not a big deal, but when you have somebody that just kinda comes in, takes advantage of the system.
Well, do we want it codified in this, or do we want to leave it up as a policy of the library?
It doesn't have any teeth if it's not, all their policies are in a code now, that's why they're written a
Oh, I
bit
see.
funny.
All right,
Yeah.
so we can add to that.
Yeah, let's just
So we're all
say,
in favor of adding language that would put a little teeth into the ramifications of repeat offenders losing materials, not being able to have library privileges. Or maybe borrowing privileges, they can go in the library,
Oh,
use
yeah,
the internet,
they can
you know,
live
but
it
they're not
all,
allowed to
yeah.
check out materials
Yeah.
until they settle
Yeah.
their charges.
so Pete, what did you have for language? That was the best one.
No, I just said something along the lines, just to make sure that the offenders were suspended until their fines were reconciled. Or
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
I
Something
did
was
use
bad.
of taking out books, taking out materials, suspended until, okay,
Fines or charges, right? We changed it to charges.
until
Charges.
charges,
Yeah.
until charges are paid. Okay, all right, I'll talk with Holly and get a sentence there.
So they're borrowing privileges.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They can still come in the library.
yes,
so-
yes. Oh, some people come in the library and stay all day.
Yeah.
Yep. It's very cozy in there.
It is.
So that brings us down to set next meeting date if necessary. So we're gonna be 2 months out on the sewer, stuff. And then, this library policy update, we wouldn't actually send to the council until after that other language would be added.
Well,
about
if
the-
we can get this tomorrow, I've already got the library, I've got that section, if we wanna add this, and we talked about it tonight, and it works out early tomorrow morning, then I'll put the library through, because I already have it written
Okay,
upstairs.
that's
I just
fine.
don't have the sentence.
Okay.
And this fits in, it's not something different,
Yeah.
something different, you can't do that.
So we're not waiting on anything
Yeah.
for that, that can go forward.
But if Holly's ill and not at work tomorrow, we'll skip this one. Yeah.
Well, if it's not on until next Wednesday, then, or Tuesday for our meeting, then we can always put it on there and put it through, and then if we're not able to get answers by then, we can table it and.
Yeah, everything has to be filed today, it's an
Oh,
ordinance, so
yeah,
it's
I
not
knew
like
that.
it's like a report or
Okay.
something.
Okay, social media one is all set to go to the council. The admin changes for public works is going to the council. Voting on the rec department changes is gonna go to the council. And we need to have a separate, so the council will vote on setting this to public hearing,
Yes.
which will be the first meeting in May.
April.
April. Kind of rush spring along.
Yes, yes, you are, yes, you are.
Yes.
So, if this works out and people are agreeable, Then at the meeting on the 17th, we'll set it to April 7th. April 7th, then we'll hold the public hearing. And then
And then
that will help the Parks and Recreation can start up as the new committee thereafter. Now technically ordinances don't go in effect for a month, but there's nothing that they're doing that's an issue. We would just reorganize the committee, so it should be fine.
So would we be able to make appointments at the April 21st meeting?
As long as we don't have somebody that contests not being on the committee again, you're all set.
Okay.
Yeah, because
'Cause
you
I'm
have,
sure
you
that
have
they-
people on these committees that you're combining, so.
Yeah, there's some duplications in there. Some people are serving on more than one committee, and sometimes it's a husband and wife serving on the same committee. So the number of people looks like a lot,
And it really is.
but it's not as many as it looks like.
Because
I'm sure they wanna kinda get up and
They
going
do.
and
Yeah.
whatnot, and get everything put together with the pool opening and anything they might be bringing to us for that.
So it's not as though they're gonna go out and spend money and do things in which we would have to wait the 30 days.
30 days.
They're actually gonna just do planning and organization and everything,
It's a
so
good
it should
time
be
of year
fine.
They just wanna be able to start meeting.
Okay, so our next meeting, speaking of planning, next meeting,
Well, if we're gonna be 2 months on the sewer thing, right?
do we, if we're
Yeah,
looking
I think
at
we're gonna get
having
legal
the
review.
joint meeting with the council and the planning board in April,
On the 28th.
do we need another meeting, or do we have anything actionable in the first 3 weeks of April before that meeting?
I don't perceive, I know they're working on the sludge, but that's a complicated item, and they're gonna have to work on that. Tiny houses is on hold right now. They may have something coming from the,
Signs?
on the signs for Kimbrough, so that might require a meeting, but at this point, we don't have, they haven't gone through their process.
Well, they're not scheduled to have another meeting until the beginning of April probably. So it would be at earliest the third week or second full week of April that we would get anything back from them probably.
They're not scheduled till the 13th of April,
They're not scheduled until the
at least
13th.
on the calendar.
So,
April, yeah.
yeah, I'm guessing we're not gonna have anything back from them in
No.
April based on how things move through the committee.
Yeah, so thinking about this, April 13th would be their meeting, so they should, if they got the signs in order, they should have something there to set it to public hearing for them.
Oh, they have to have a public hearing
Yes.
first too?
Yes.
They have a public hearing
Okay,
before
so
we
we're
have
not
a
getting
public
anything from
hearing.
them until May.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's a lengthy
God.
So do we
process.
wanna not have a meeting in
redundancy
April
of
since we
government.
have extra meeting in there?
Yeah, we'll just kinda like play it by ear on
Yes.
the May meeting.
Well, no, maybe May.
Yeah,
Because
this
we could
gives
add
us,
one at any time if we had.
Yeah, we can be more flexible than that.
it gives us sort of a time frame talking about this, how it's gonna go along. Like when we get the language, I can give it out to all of you, but we can then play it by ear, how to get everything together to fit into a schedule. When the planning board votes on an ordinance, any items that are going into the zoning ordinance, the town council's meeting has to be a certain number of days after the
Okay.
planning board, and so we're talking a while here.
Okay. Well, we'll think about May, but we're also gonna be having, community meetings after the meeting on the 28th. So we'll play it by ear on that one. So, anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I think it'd be great if we could address maybe, what do we say, we need to address the tiny homes, like our direction that we wanna go in with that to the planning board?
Well, we need the planning board.
Do we wanna just tell them, we wanna just change the square footage, we don't wanna get like
That's
super
what I've been saying
crazy
all
with it?
along, just remove this minimum square footage.
Maybe we wanna try to just make, like, try not to get like crazy into that, cause I think we're trying to address several things during that meeting, but maybe we wanna just tell them.
Oh, in the joint meeting?
Yeah, in the joint meeting,
Yeah,
that
the
maybe
joint, I
something.
think
the
that's
joint
where that's
meeting's
gonna
about
draw
the-
that loose, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, community planning is definitely one of the topics that I'm interested in having the board and the board talk about together.
Absolutely.
And that's a big part of where you want the town to go in the next 20-25 years, is you gotta start with your planning and your land planning now to kind of think that out and figure out what that's gonna look like.
So I think the meeting will be very helpful, because when Peak went in and talked to Economic Expansion Corporation, talked to the planning board last summer, They talked about how we needed to look at the industrial, the property around the industrial park,
Yeah.
and whether there's some other parcels that could be rezoned. And then more importantly, if we want to bring people to the town, new families, you know, most people when they call up want to move into something that's done, and not have to renovate the older houses. And the people that want to renovate older houses are happy to come here because we have a lot of those. But if we could make it so the subdivision ordinance actually allows the developer to make a profit, so they'll actually build a subdivision here,
Right.
that can bring in the new homes. But you have one of the most restrictive subdivision ordinances I've ever seen. And so different people who have wandered around the town have looked at that, and we've brought that into the planning board a few times, and, you know, it hasn't had any revisions, but we need to make a subdivision ordinance that protects the town, yes, but also allows people to develop
Allows for growth.
subdivision, for growth, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good topic
It's, yeah,
for
definitely,
the discussion.
yeah.
Anything else, council?
So it's agreed, no April meeting.
No April meeting. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I second that.
I say aye to that.
All.
Aye.
Aye.
And thank you for letting me sit in on your meeting.
All right, this is my week of many meetings.
Start finance at
Five.
5.
Five.
And then the
Five.
next
Yes.
one will be at
6:30.
6.
6.
I think it's 6.
Six.
That's the April 2nd one. The bank, yep, it's at 6. That should be an interesting
Well, it's
meeting,
because
talking
they're all
with the bankers
they're all
after
hopping
everything that's
around.
going on with the stock market. It'll be a great meeting.
Oh, I know, we had gotten over, I had announced that we had gotten above $1 million in the cemetery trust. Starting out, when we combined all those in 2004, we had under 200,000, so this was just miraculous. And I got the report today, that's not what we have anymore.
It'll go back up.
It'll come back.
It'll go up. It's a major change.